Barry Levinson's version of the Bobby Darin film didn't go ahead, so I didn't see Johnny Depp again, unfortunately. Many people over the years had been involved in trying to get the story made, and it hadn't been the easiest experience for Barry dealing with so many players. In 1985, when we were in the process of producing Tin Men, Marty Ingalls, who'd been an actor and comedian, and was more famously known as husband to the actress and singer Shirley Jones, called Barry, constantly asking him to consider directing the Bobby Darin story. He purported to have the rights from Darin's son, Dodd, but Barry wasn't interested in dealing with Ingalls. Consequently, I ended up speaking with the wheeler dealer more than Barry did. Despite the fact I told him to contact Barry's agent, he wooed me with funny cards and flowers, and even sent me a bottle of my favourite perfume, Mousse Cartier, in an effort to reach Barry, but it didn't work. Finally, over 20 years later, and as far as I know, without the help of Marty Ingalls, Kevin Spacey won his desperate attempt to produce the film and play the role of Bobby Darin. He did all the singing, too. I'm sure he did a good job, but I couldn't watch the film. Back in LA, and now unemployed again, I asked my friend Sandy, who ran a looping company, if she could use me on any of the films and TV shows for which she provided additional voices. When these projects have been completed, ADR, additional dialogue replacement, or looping as it's more commonly called, is added to scenes in post-production to create atmosphere. For instance, if a scene between two actors is in a restaurant, dialogue is subtly added in the background of other diners, waiters, and so on, to make it realistic. Sandy would study scenes to determine where extra dialogue was needed, the style, accents, and so forth, and the actors came up with appropriate and realistic lines. Then, with the approval of the post-production supervisor and producer of the film, up to 8 actors or loopers would record these lines in the studio against the scenes on the screen. More often than not, it was just a few words here or there, which were improvised. Other times, actors would create the sound of a crowd murmuring by repeating the word "walla." In England, actors say "rhubarb, rhubarb." I've no idea who decided these were the ideal words for fake chatter, but they've been around for a very long time, and I'm sure no one watching a crowd in a film or TV show would ever imagine that the sound they're hearing is pretty much gobbledygook, although I don't think the words gobbledygook would pass for fake chatter. Several parodies have been made in TV shows and films based on the need for this additional crowd murmur, but I think it's more of an in-joke within the industry. Often a looper will be asked to revoice a supporting actor on screen whose dialogue may be unintelligible. When I was working on an 18th century independent English film, I was asked by the producer to revoice a minor character, a prostitute, yelling on the street. That was a challenge because it meant I had to match my words to the movement of the actor's lips. I managed it, but it took time. Sometimes famous actors need to be revoiced on a line or two, and because it can be almost impossible to get a star into the studio for this purpose, and expensive too, the skill of a voice impersonator is called for. Although in Hollywood impersonators are not too hard to find, nonetheless it's still a daunting task to match voices exactly. Anyway, I just thought I'd share another side to the film industry you might not have known about. As I'd mentioned a while back, my hypnotherapy friend Chuck Hirsch had inherited a great deal of artwork from his father, Joseph Hirsch, and then later from his mother. By this time, Chuck had moved to a larger, beautiful apartment overlooking the beach in Santa Monica and had a lot more wall space. He asked me if I could arrange framing of certain eclectic pieces, as well as help him hang them, for which he would pay me. This was a nice little part-time job, since Chuck and I got along very well. Except he hated it when I whistled while I worked. One day, he invited me to have lunch with him and his friend, Jocelyn Brando, at a local cafe, and I was thrilled to be meeting Marlon's older sister. Now in her early 80s, she had previously had a somewhat modest career as an actress on the New York stage, and later appeared in several films and television shows. Apparently, it was said that she resembled her famous brother, but I didn't see the likeness at all. She had a no-nonsense character and an earthiness which I appreciated. Jocelyn was very much her own person. She talked a bit about the intensive journaling workshops she had been teaching for several years, based on a method by psychotherapist Ira Progoff, who was influenced by Carl Jung. The subject fascinated me, and she invited me to visit her the following week so that she could explain more about the workshops. As I entered her home, a very modest, cozy cottage nestled within the Santa Monica Canyon, her television was on and tuned to CNN. No, this isn't another John F. Kennedy Jr. moment, but an everlasting memory nonetheless. Anyway, I noticed that there was wide sticky tape covering the bottom of the TV screen, and I asked Jocelyn why it was there. "Ugh, I find the news crawl distracting. I can't stand it," she exclaimed. Since then, whenever I see moving text on the bottom of the TV during a news broadcast, I'm immediately drawn back to the sticky tape on Jocelyn Brando's TV in her cozy cottage in the canyon. Not exactly a profound memory of Marlon Brando's sister, especially since the purpose of my visit was to learn more about her rather heady and intense psychotherapy workshops. Often it can be something small and perhaps insignificant that stays with us, but I suppose that's one of the many mysteries of memories. Sometimes a sliver, a flash of someone or something appears in our consciousness, and we're transported in time. Of course, this is very common when hearing music and with certain smells. And then there are those magical déjà vu moments. How can we forget those? One day, I got a call from an actress friend, Judith, who several years earlier had studied at Yale Drama School. A group of graduates from Yale had formed an acting company and were performing a one-act play at a cabaret club in Hollywood. The play was called Road and was set in Lancashire in the north of England during the 80s, the Thatcher years. Judy said that the company were looking for an English actress to play the role of Brenda, a tough-talking, hard-drinking woman who's seen better days. Judith had recommended me because I'm English, naturally. I auditioned and got the role. The Yale actors were all wonderful, except that their accents were all over the place and ranged from Scottish to Cockney and Liverpudlian. There wasn't one Lancashire accent among them. Consequently, my main job was as dialect coach to get them speaking as close to a northern accent as possible. There's a scene where my character Brenda is trying to persuade the main character and narrator, Scullery, a rough and ready punk, to buy alcohol for her. She's previously paid him with sexual favours, but he's not interested anymore. We'd rehearsed it a couple of times, and I was trying to kiss Scullery and plead with him to give me money for drink. But then a stronger instinct took over. I knew that Brenda was desperate for a drink, so I decided to go all out in an attempt to change Scullery's mind. I became sexually very aggressive and was rubbing my body up and down his and touching him. We were both fully clothed, I might add. I think my aggression took the actor by surprise, but it felt more authentic. Then when the director applauded, I knew I'd got it right. Yes, Marie, that's it. I love it. It had been almost a year since I'd had my breast cancer surgery and reconstruction. And this act of using my body in a sexual way, but as a character in a play, was very liberating. Next time, film directing course and Andre Agassi. Thanks again for listening.